So swales are ditches on contour that intercept the flow of water. They can be integrated into farms and acreages and specific characteristics, can be part of an overall regeneration and drought proofing strategy. So forests are water harvesting and climate monitoring elements, and swales are water harvesting elements that fast track forests. So this is actually Dakota Cohen's farm. Amazing property. If you live in Alberta, he has a free farm tour every year. Highly recommend going to it. They always sell out. They're free. If they're not free, they're very cheap. I think he charges $10, so you show up and then he gives you your money back or something. But you should probably just leave the $10 with him. It's worth the 3 hours that he spends with you going around the property. And he's got massive swales and has proven that they are highly effective in the cold climate. And he's got a couple of YouTube videos up you can check out that go through what swales do in terms of removing frost from the ground early, water harvesting. I think last year he harvested 40 years of rainwater in his melt event. So we keep joking that at some point here, the well on his property is pretty moderate. Like I think he gets 1 or 2 GPM, which is pretty low for a well, especially when you're trying to keep a whole herd of cattle and pigs alive. Now he's got a lot of ponds and dugouts on his property, which is where most of the water for those animals come from. But we keep wondering how long it's going to take for all this water that he's pushing down into the ground to start showing up in his well bore, so that all of a sudden he gets 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 GPM. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. It's just a matter of what the lag time is in between when you set these water harvesting elements up and when they start to recharge groundwater aquifers. His farm is more productive now than it's been in many years. They're still on a regenerative path. His family is a very progressive family. They've been organic for 30 some years. He's a 4th generation farmer. But still kind of adopting these permaculture principles into what they do. And so here's a couple of examples of those same swales in winter. They're picking up groundwater melt. And so there's a huge debate right now on the internet about whether or not swales are good or bad. A lot of people within the permaculture realm love to bash swales. And I just want to make a couple comments about that, because if you find somebody bashing swales, I'm not going to tell you that swales are good or bad. Bashing swales would be like a carpenter telling you that hammers suck. The carpenter would never tell you that a hammer sucks. However, a carpenter would tell you that a hammer sucks for putting in a screw. A hammer is great for putting in a nail or for pulling the nail out, but it's not good for putting in a screw. And so within the realm of permaculture, we have this huge toolbox that we can gain access to. We've got, especially in the water harvesting realm, we've got swales, we've got rain gardens, we've got media lunas, we've got all these different mechanisms that we can put to productive use in order to, again, get ecosystems off the ground. When somebody says one water harvesting element is good and one water harvesting element is bad, in my opinion anyways, and so take this with a grain of salt, there's just not enough diagnosis. So another way to think about this is if you tore a ligament in your knee and you went to the doctor and you told the doctor, you know, I tore my ACL and I want you to do surgery on me as soon as possible. Like, it has to happen. What would the doctor say to you? He would look at you like you're crazy. He's like, well, no, I'm not going to put you under the knife because you think you've got some sort of issue with your ACL. He's like, I'm going to diagnose it. I'm going to go through my process. I'm going to do my due diligence. I'm going to x-ray you. I'm going to put you under an MRI. I might put a scope in there and see what's going on. And after that, we'll assess all of the options, and then we will address those opportunities based on what we find through our diagnosis. And so I think, and this is what we do in our consulting practice, we have a company called Adaptive Habitat, that some of the most valuable work that you can do as a designer, whether it's for yourself or for somebody else, is doing an appropriate diagnosis, really asking a lot of questions, understanding what the limiting factor is in this ecosystem. Why is this ecosystem stalling? What's stopping it? and you ask 1,000 questions. And after you've asked those 1,000 questions, you'll start to get a little bit of a picture of what's going on. And instead of coming out and saying swales suck and we have to use keyline or some crazy thing like that, you'll look at the problem through that lens of diagnosis and say, well, based on the slope and the soils and the climatic conditions and whether it's cold or hot or dry, what type of farming is going on, what the goals of the person using the property are, what kind of equipment they're using. When you take all of that into account, then you can get a sense of what water harvesting element might make sense. Now, the converse of this is that people can go and take this course, these permaculture design courses, and leave and decide that they're going to put swales everywhere. So some people just talk about swales as though they're gospel. They're just a water harvesting element. They're just a speed bump in the landscape that are designed on contour to slow water down. And you have a whole toolbox full of them. So when you're thinking about these water harvesting elements as we go through this, think about the fact that you've got this toolbox and try and understand the base principles of what each of the water harvesting elements are trying to do, and then compare it to the diagnosis that you've done for your property or for your client's property, and only then will you get a sense of whether or not this is going to be a fit. So it's really easy to react and just say this is good, this is bad. There is no good or bad. There's just appropriate and context specific. So try and understand the context with which you are working in. This is just another picture of Dakota's farm, so you can really get a sense of what he's doing. He's got this massive swale right here down there. This is his, I think it's a 3 million liter or 3 million gallon dugout. I can't remember the numbers. They're hard to remember. This massive stream that just kind of flows through this property here. Actually, I think it comes through this drainage right here. And this all gets absorbed all through here. This is a dead or dying lake. And so all this water, this is his 40 years of catchment. I think he took this last year with my drone. And so, yeah, pretty amazing property. It's 160 acres. They do a combination of multicultural grains and legumes down here, barley and pea with a couple of other biodiverse covers. They've got a ton of grazing land up here, and they've got 2 other quarters that they have access to for grazing their cows, beef, chickens, and pigs. And so if you're ever looking for some of the best meat in Alberta, I highly recommend checking out Grassroots Family Farms. They do amazing stuff. Just had one of their pork chops tonight. It was unbelievable.